you plan to incorporate Sean Payton and Bo Nix into your Christmas Day plans? Can the Denver Nuggets, after a tough loss in Game 4, find a way to outlast the deep, long, and dangerous Oklahoma City Thunder? And is Nikola Jokic simply too far in his own head ahead of a pivotal Game 5 later tonight? All things to come on today's rundown as we come to you live from Colorado Springs at the beautiful Broadmoor Hotel on the edge of Cheyenne Lake at the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains, where just 43 days from today, hundreds of golfers and more than 130,000 spectators will descend upon these beautiful grounds for the 45th U.S. Senior Open Championship. We are here for Media Day. The sun is out, the water is glistening, and the vibes simply could not be higher. When it comes to the Denver Broncos, the vibes are feeling, or should be, in my opinion, feeling pretty high about the momentum that this team is carrying from the 2024 season into 2025, and maybe how this team is being perceived by its peers around the league. And some of this is starting to churn as we continue to get tomorrow evening, where the NFL teams from all 32 markets around the country will release their schedule with the exact list and order of opponents for the 2025 season. As is tradition and customary in these situations, we've already had a handful of leaks and planned releases come out where we now know that the Denver Broncos will play internationally once again in London. They will not play at Wembley Stadium as they have in the past. They will actually play at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, London's other NFL-worthy venue. Because, let's be honest, Wembley has kind of become the unofficial home of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and there's speculation that if and when the NFL chooses to move or start a team internationally, the Jacksonville Jaguars would be a prime candidate to move forward. Nonetheless, the Denver Broncos will face the new-look New York Jets post-Aaron Rodgers era in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We also found out that the Denver Broncos preferentially wanted to play in Berlin, in Germany, where the Indianapolis Colts, who are already on their schedule, have been confirmed to be hosting a game. But the NFL didn't give the Denver Broncos what they want. And I think the reason why actually could be kind of encouraging for Broncos country. Let me explain. It was reported that the Denver Broncos were heavily interested in playing in Berlin if and when they had to play internationally. And the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, were actually the ones to deny the Denver Broncos that request via the league. The Colts, who had the option about who to play in Germany as the host team internationally, they felt that reportedly the Denver Broncos, who travel so well as a fan base, would be more of a challenge and turn a potential neutral site game into a potential disadvantage for the team that is supposed to be hosting the neutral site international game. So in a weird way, the Colts not wanting to play the Broncos in Berlin and forcing them to play a different game internationally is almost like a pseudo compliment, not only to the Broncos, who they see as a tough opponent and feel the need to take advantage of a neutral site opportunity, but to Broncos country as a fan base for acknowledging the heavy force with which they travel to support their team outside of the Mile High City. We also learned that the Denver Broncos will be a major part of your Christmas plans, I assume, because they will be playing the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day Eve at 6:15 exclusively on Amazon Prime on Thursday night. And Damani Leach, who was asked about this game against Kansas City, but also about the prospect of playing internationally, said a lot about continuing the tradition that Broncos country has about traveling well. Here's what the team president said. Quote, "The Broncos are thrilled to represent our fans and the NFL overseas in the 2025 NFL London games at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against the Jets. Broncos country has no borders, and we join the NFL in sharing a deep commitment to growing the game on a global stage. After having such a wonderful experience in London a few years ago, we can't wait to return to the United Kingdom to engage with such passionate fans and build on the Broncos' proud international history. I think this is important on a number of levels. When you factor in both games, right? You have the Broncos playing at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London against the Jets, and you now have a confirmation from the league that the Denver Broncos will play in primetime against the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day, which the NFL has made a mission to rob as a sports holiday from the likes of the NBA as they continue to put primetime games on Christmas Day in addition to potentially Christmas Eve and into the New Year's holidays. And I think that this is an important indictment about where the Broncos are at as a franchise, what the league thinks of the Broncos, and what the Broncos' fellow peers among the other 31 NFL markets think about them as we head into the sophomore season with Bo Nix and further into the Sean Payton tenure here in Denver. I think this is a massive sign of a step forward for the Denver Broncos, who for the better part of a decade spent their time in NFL purgatory or relatively close to the NFL's basement. The revolving door and carousel of quarterbacks that never seemed to end. And just when you thought that the Broncos could find newer and newer lows year after year, from an ownership debacle with the trust situation to head coaching turmoil to quarterback and roster turnover, constantly finding ways to mess things up in the draft and development department. That seems to be washing away quicker and quicker the more that Sean Payton stamps his imprint on this organization and the more that Bo Nix continues to develop, not just as a potential franchise quarterback, but as a marketable name around the league. The NFL, who is continuing to try to grow their global footprint and expand beyond the borders of the terrestrial 48 states, would not want to put a product out there to an international audience that they wouldn't deem worthy of representing the Shield. And the Denver Broncos, at least in this 25 season and beyond, are part of that contingency of teams that the NFL wants to push out to other countries to try to gain more and more viewership outside of the United States. You take that and you factor that in with the Christmas Day primetime game that the Broncos, and yes, the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, but they could have put any game on the Kansas City Chiefs schedule in a primetime slot. They choose to do it on Christmas Day, where they also get the benefit of having the Denver Broncos in a divisional matchup with the probable expectation that the Denver Broncos, coming off of a wild card playoff berth, ending their streak of losing seasons, ending their postseason drought, are going to continue to develop and ascend and potentially challenge the Kansas City Chiefs in a divisional matchup late enough in the season that there could be significant ramifications about which team's path to the postseason gets a little bit clearer or a little bit murkier. And then you have the added layer of the Indianapolis Colts essentially ducking the Denver Broncos and not wanting them to square off in Berlin because of the traveling nature of Broncos country, because of the way that this team is presenting itself as a tough matchup for Indianapolis, as they did just a number of seasons ago, and not wanting, if you're the Indianapolis Colts, to jeopardize a potential loss on the schedule where they instead elect to go with a team they're more comfortable with, like the Atlanta Falcons. All of these things, from the Colts to the league, seem to be genuine compliments to the Denver Broncos and Broncos country, and I think it's a massive indictment on the direction that things are heading. The Denver Nuggets, if they want to continue heading in the right direction for this postseason, are going to need to find a way to win a pivotal Game 5. And there is no one I would rather speak to about the important nature of this game than our guy, Jake Shapiro, at Shapalicious on Twitter, who covers the Nuggets as deeply and closely as anyone I have ever met or worked with in this market. Jake, in your own words, tell me just how big of an opportunity the Denver Nuggets squabbled away in Game 4 by letting a 7 or 8 point lead with 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter slip away at home.
Yeah, only I think 9 teams in NBA history have ever come back from down 3-1. Of course, the Denver Nuggets are responsible for 2 of those efforts in the 2020 bubble. So it's nearly impossible to come back in the NBA from down 3-1 like the Nuggets almost had the Thunder. And it felt like the Nuggets would basically be able to just coast through game 5 and have a chance in either game 6 or game 7 to knock off the number 1 team in the NBA. Instead, in my mind, and it's something I'm going to talk about on the Mile High Hoops podcast today, the Thunder are a young team who haven't had a tough moment yet. And going into the fourth quarter down and going down 8 in the fourth quarter, and Alex Caruso coming in and screaming at his younger teammates, I think that's a moment that can really galvanize this group and put them in a place where they're able to actually win an NBA championship this year.
Jake, when we're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder, that was the dynamic after game, I want to say 3, because we saw the Nuggets with an incredible performance from Jokic help steal a game early in the series in Oklahoma City. Then they win game 3 at home, and it really came down to that championship medal and that veteran experience and leadership that the Nuggets had that thus far the Oklahoma City Thunder haven't. Do you feel like this experience, this microcosm of an experience in game 4, where it felt on the television broadcast, and I'm sure you were able to have a closer finger on the pulse in the building, like the Thunder were tight, and the Nuggets had an opportunity to potentially crack some of that resolve and that confidence that this young upstart Oklahoma City team may have had. Do you think that the Thunder overcoming that adversity to win Game 4 has cured them of what the gap between that team with the youth and inexperience and the Nuggets with their veteran leadership? Have the Thunder in game 4 essentially nullified that potential advantage that the Nuggets had just because of this last result in game 4?
No, Richie, I don't think that happens overnight. I think that takes years of experience, years of wins, years of losses to take a group to that level that the Denver Nuggets are at. So I would still say if the Nuggets have the Thunder close in a late game situation, the Nuggets have the advantage. But the Thunder don't allow teams to be in those close game situations often. The Thunder, I believe, are 30-1 this season in games Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays under his minute per game average. So it just goes to show you when he gets to rest, the Thunder are normally blowing teams out in those games. To me, Sunday was nothing more than 2 teams that were both tight, both tired, and ultimately the Thunder win because they can go deeper into their bench. They've got guys like Kason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, who can come in and hit threes and change the games, Alex Caruso. And when the Denver Nuggets can't sub any player out that's any sort of decent for the first quarter, look, the Nuggets starters were massive plus in this game. They were like plus 15 in 19 minutes of action. Nikola Jokic plays the whole first quarter. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on the bench resting 5 minutes into the game. So people are going to say, oh, they missed shots, yada, yada, yada. It's nothing more than they missed shots. The Nuggets have no legs, and that shows up in the faction of missing shots. So when the Nuggets go to the free throw line late, it's no wonder they're not hitting their free throws. They don't have the legs to even hit free throws, let alone get open throughout the course of the regular part of the game. So I don't think that Sunday is a huge indicator in terms of the true talent level of this series. It was really just a test of these rosters in terms of how deep they are, which is more in the regular season notion than the top 6, top 7 thing we often more see in the playoffs.
After that game, and really after that weekend of games from Friday to Sunday, where we saw the Nuggets have to play a late game Friday night that goes to overtime and then a matinee game on Sunday, certainly for a team that has mismanaged their roster construction and failed to add adequate depth, is not the ideal setup, and I think it manifested itself in some pretty historically bad performances from the Nuggets postseason perspective. After that weekend of games and the loss in Game 4, David Adelman was asked about the concept of overutilization of the starters, the heavy 5, right? Having your starters play minutes north of 40 and kind of leaning on it by force of circumstance, if nothing else, to try to keep this thing tight and allow their experience and championship medal to kind of take over late in games as it did in Game 3. Where do you stand on the prospect that David Adelman touched on when it comes to potentially playing more guys going deeper into that 7-8 man rotation to try to juice some more minutes out of them and spare the starters, knowing that the longer you have those 5 who are clearly your best options off the floor, the more chance you leave for this thing to get out of hand from a scoring perspective.
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces of lyrics from any song is a song by Car Seat Headrest. And the lyric is, "My horse broke his back to get me here. My horse broke his back and left me here." Is there no better accurate way to tell you what's going on with Nikola Jokic than that exactly? Nikola Jokic broke his back to get the Denver Nuggets. Literally, he has a nerve impingement in his back to get the Denver Nuggets to this point. And he does not look like himself right now. But the Denver Nuggets are not doing diddly squat without Nikola Jokic in the starting 5 playing to their capabilities and playing as much as possible. Ultimately, this season isn't going to come down to Julian Strawther playing 4 minutes or 7 minutes coming off the bench. Payton Watson playing, 12 minutes or 16 minutes. It's going to come down to the starting 5. So, yeah, can you cushion the starting 5? Maybe get Jamal Murray off his legs a little bit more by buying him some time with Julian Strawther? Sure. But look at the start of the fourth quarter of that game. The game was not lost late, Richie. It was lost at the start of the fourth quarter. One of the first 3 plays of the fourth quarter, and 1 3-point play, 3-pointer, 3-pointer. 9 straight points for Oklahoma City, and that's how they bit back into Denver's lead after they took an 8-point lead. So to me, it's that sequence of the game when the bench guys are in that are really screwing the Nuggets. So they've got to have their starters out there one way or the other. And ultimately, yeah, they are going to look tired and they might not be able to get their shots up, but they are not deep enough and they do not have enough NBA players on their bench to keep out there for significant portions of the game. They can buy a minute or 2, but that's about it. And that's the roster construction of this team. And that's why the general manager got fired a week before the playoffs.
I want to zero in on a handful of players here in closing, Jake, for the Denver Nuggets. One, you mentioned Nikola Jokic. If he's dealing with a nerve issue in his back, there's clearly something wrong, potentially physically, because his touch doesn't seem to be there. He seems aggravated and frustrated, but it also feels like there might be a mental war going on with Nikola Jokic as it relates to potentially the way that he himself is officiated, the way that the Oklahoma City Thunder, the style of defense that they play. It feels like he is potentially trying to fight a 2-front war, one with the Oklahoma City Thunder and one with the officials. Do you think that Nikola Jokic might just be a little bit too far in his own head right now? And how potentially might he be able to shake out of that to avoid detriment for the Nuggets?
A couple things going on with Nikola Jokic. One, he has 4 separate injuries. He has the elbow injury. He has a back injury, which I just talked about. He has an ankle injury, which kept him out of games in the second half of the season. And he has a wrist injury that dates back several seasons now that has to do with his ligaments in his wrist. So it's a lot going on with Nikola Jokic's body, who, by the way, his 680 games just in the NBA, regular season and postseason, so not counting his international career, which would take him over the top, are the most games played since the bubble in the NBA. He is the Iron Man of the NBA with the amount of games he has played. So there's a lot going on with Jokic just in terms of his body. Secondarily, you talk about a mental issue, perhaps. I want to just start with Oklahoma City's defense. Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren are legitimately bothering Nikola Jokic in a way we have not seen since the 2021 Sun series, something I referenced on this show going into this series as a possibility. Nikola Jokic has not been solved by any means, but he certainly has been deterred and diminished by this Oklahoma City defense, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise given they're the number 1 defense in the NBA and one of the best defenses in the NBA since the Bill Russell Celtics. So I'm not too stunned by that. But when that number 1 defense can play where we're seeing ESPN put highlight clips up of Alex Caruso fouling Nikola Jokic 4 separate times on one play, and it's not called for a foul, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets a and 1 call, and the exact same thing happens 20 seconds later on the other side of the floor.
Literally like the next sequence.
And Nikola Jokic doesn't get the same call. I understand the frustrations. I'm on Nikola Jokic's side on this, but I do agree with the sentiment that he needs to tone it back and focus a little bit more about not going off on the officials. That shouldn't be a problem tonight because Zach Zarba is on the call, and he's one of the best referees in the NBA, and he has no checkered history with Nikola Jokic like some of these other guys. So there's a lot of things going on with the Nuggets. And then it comes back to the roster thing that I'm going to keep bringing up. The Thunder are putting 5 guys touching the paint on almost every single possession. They're letting Jokic shoot threes. He missed 14 straight threes at one point in this series. They're letting other players on the Nuggets shoot threes. Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are the only ones they even need to touch outside on the three-point line. They're letting Aaron Gordon shoot. They're letting Russell Westbrook shoot. So all the Thunder are doing are taking 2 7-footers, 3 lengthy defenders, and clogging the paint. And it's making Nikola Jokic's job nearly impossible. So I don't buy the notion that he's in his head or he's lost his touch or something. I buy the notion that the Thunder are playing kick butt defense, and the Denver Nuggets don't really have the pieces in place to solve it with just outside shooting and taking the Thunder's defense out of that shell.
Fascinating. Yeah, the swarming nature of Oklahoma City's defense. You mentioned Alex Caruso, who from a veteran presence has provided such a spark defensively, just being a pest around the rim, poking the ball out when they're trying to get their offense set up. He's definitely been more of a factor in the series than maybe I anticipated. Jamal Murray has typically been a Game 5 game for the Nuggets. That seems to be something where I don't know if a switch flips for him mentally, or he just as a veteran savvy guard knows when the right times are to throttle it up and turn it on. Do you anticipate Jamal Murray, a playoff Murray Game 5 signing, the way that we saw last series, even though this time it will be on the road?
Yeah, 85% of winners of Game 5 in NBA history have gone on to win that series when it's been tied 2-2. Of course, one of those 15% instances was last year with the Denver Nuggets in round 2 with Game 6 and Game 7 against Minnesota. But Jamal Murray knows when to step up in the big moments. I don't think Jamal Murray's been bad by any means in this series, and this series has been basically the stop Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic series. And the Thunder are so well prepared to do specifically that with Jamal Murray between Lou Dort and Alex Caruso. Last game, Lou Dort, who got Defensive Player of the Year votes, was played off the floor by the Denver Nuggets and Jamal Murray in a game where the Nuggets couldn't shoot. So I think that Jamal Murray has done a great job in this series. He hasn't been historically as good on the road as he is at home. So I wouldn't say that I'm feeling the Jamal Murray game today. I think I'm feeling the Nikola Jokic game, especially, Richie, if the MVP gets announced here in the next 5 hours, which is on the table, because you have the ultimate circumstance of a Game 5 in Oklahoma City. Shea gets his award, and Nikola Jokic says, F this, right? This is the total get back game. So I don't think that tonight is the night I would say is Jamal Murray's night. I want to see Jamal Murray out there with 10 assists, 9 assists, a lack of turnovers. That to me would be the important part for the Denver Nuggets. That to me would mean everyone else is eating. So if Jamal gets 18, 19 points, 20 points, and it's efficient, I think the Nuggets are in good shape. They don't need 35 from him tonight. They need Nikola Jokic to be the best player in the world tonight. That's what the Denver Nuggets need.
Last couple ones on the way out, and then a score prediction for you here. What versions of Michael Porter Jr. and Russell Westbrook do you think we get tonight from the Nuggets? And give me your ultimate prediction for tonight's Game 5.
Well, it seems like it's one game bad, one game good with Michael Porter Jr., so the trend's going to tell me it's going to be a good MPJ night. Russell Westbrook, given what Ramona Shelburne just reported on ESPN, I don't know if you've seen this yet, Richie, but it was a pretty damning report by Ramona talking about the good and the bad with Russ, that he was called immature by teammates after Game 2 of the Clippers series, and that there still seems to be some internal strife within the Denver Nuggets locker room, some stuff that I've talked about before, but not as firmly reported as our colleague Ramona, who does a fantastic job with some of this stuff. So this is all still brewing behind the scenes at the Nuggets, some of the same stuff that led to Michael Malone being fired. So I wonder how that affects today's game now that that is out in the public. But I would expect Russell Westbrook to bring a lot of energy. He always does. He was legitimately awful in Game 4. He was 2 for 12 and a -20. So if the Nuggets can, make a couple more shots, if Michael Porter Jr. is a little bit better, hopefully you won't have to play Russell Westbrook as much, and he's better at that lesser volume. So maybe a Russ 3 for 7 performance with only 1 turnover. That would be kind of where I would hope Russ would be at.
I love it, Jake. Give me a prediction for tonight's game. Nuggets win Game 5, or are we heading into Game 6 back in Denver facing elimination?
Oh, man, the pattern's telling me 1 win, 1 loss, and that's how it's all gone all season this year, Richie. But I don't know how the Denver Nuggets are going to get to 100 points against the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight. I think the Thunder have finally kind of cracked the code a little bit on the Nuggets, and to me it feels like that moment that they had in the fourth quarter of Game 4 is going to be a pivotal moment in their franchise's history, similar to how we feel about how the Nuggets did that in round 2 against the Phoenix Suns when they finally broke through right after Matt Ishbia stole the ball from Nikola Jokic. To me, that's, that's the pivotal moment for the Thunder, and it's unfortunate that it comes against the Nuggets, but everyone needs to earn their keep against the champs, and tonight the Thunder are going to have to put their nose to the grindstone. I'm looking at Jalen Williams as a guy that needs to step up and have a game more like similar to Game 3 than Game 4. Chet Holmgren's been awesome. So ultimately, I do think that it's going to be the Thunder in a game that goes like 105 to 95 or 105 to maybe 92, somewhere in there. And that might sound rough, but right now the Nuggets are having a lot of trouble scoring, and that also leads to some defensive issues that they've had in the past. So if they only lose by 15 in a game that they're not scoring, that's ultimately a good sign of this group still being together, and it gives them a chance to move forward into a Game 6 and a Game 7.
Well, we are just a number of hours away from finding out. Jake Shapiro, thank you as always for joining us on the show. Your Nuggets insight is such a blessing to me and to all of our readers and listeners at DenverSports.com and on DenverSports 143. Thank you again for joining me. We'll catch up again soon. And to the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I will be headed to the links here just shortly as I get to taste a sampling of what our U.S. Open Senior Championship golfers will get to do a little bit more than 42 days from today. Give us a follow on all of our social media channels at DEN Sports 1043, at Denver Sports 1043. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will catch you tomorrow where we will break down the result of Game 5 and maybe toss a few predictions out there about where the rest of the Broncos opponents will slot in their schedule on NFL schedule release day. We'll catch you then. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.